my great honor to present our first speaker, Karen Viera, who heads up HR for Church's Chicken and Texas International. Karen is a senior executive with over 25 years of multifunctional experience in highly regulated Fortune 500 insurance and healthcare industry. Karen also keenly understands the complexities and significant issues related to change management and organization design during times of change or growth. And she has deep expertise in the integration of people, processes, and structure. And with that, Karen, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Linda, and a special thanks to CareerArc for the opportunity to share. And I do look at this as an opportunity to share a journey that I just went through, and hopefully you'll have some takeaways from this session. So when you think about it, why would you want to create, why do this? And when I think about it, the biggest cost of doing business is often labor. And this can run as much as 70% of your total business cost. So that's the why that you want to think about. I also think that creating a people brand is a real opportunity for HR to step out of that comfort zone and contribute much needed value to an area typically owned by finance. So it gives us an opportunity to be leaders in our own right and to contribute to the organization. So what is a people brand? So the goal of a people brand is to inspire, motivate, attract, retain top talent by communicating a message that creates an emotional connection to the brand, to your company, and fosters organizational alignment. So I'm going to go through a very practical approach that I used with the team and with the organization in creating a people brand. I'm just going to walk through how I define the current situation, how I built a business case to garner support and finances to do this, the involvement of employees, validation or development of an EVP, employee value proposition, how I created a framework, how we launched the people brand and executed through goals. So this is going to give you a very practical step-by-step process on how to go about this or how to evaluate what you have. So moving to the next slide, you want to think about the current situation. And you want to be clear in your understanding because you're going to use this to build your case, your business case. And for me, the business case was we were in the process of rebranding our image of Church's Chicken and Texas Chicken internationally, but we were going to tie it to our Texas roots. And we were founded in 1952. And I didn't see that. That was missing for me. So I had to bring forward, and then I use this in my business case of my current situation. I felt that we were absence of a people approach that really defined the guest experience that aligned with our brand. I didn't see the team member pride that was embedded in how we welcome our guests. And I was very unclear on the perspective that how are we really going to recognize and celebrate that swagger of our Texas heritage. And I wanted relatable words, examples, and behaviors. So these were the things that were missing. And that's how I started evaluating that current situation. And then on the next slide, I really talked about building the business case. So I wanted to share with you what was my thinking. And I wanted data that would resonate with all of my executives, my C-suite executives, and also with my CFO. So I did some business research, and I realized that the primary touch points that create the guest experience are people, product, and image. And that generates loyalty in choosing the brand, returning to the brand, and telling others about the brand. So your case might be different, but what you want to drive down to or drill down to is your reason and how does it impact the business. So I had three things: people, product, and image. And so if we were already working on the product and the marketing, and we were working on changing the restaurant image, that allowed me the opportunity to bring the people into the business case. And facts and data is very important. So I used turnover data. I used credited sources on what it takes to build a customer experience and loyalty brand, and why it mattered in building value and equity in the brand. So I was really speaking to the business case in putting all of my information together. And then on the next slide, in continuing that thinking, I said, what if we do nothing? How do I put this into business terms? I really wanted the impact of because I assumed that there would be a couple of people said we don't need it. It's not important. So I use that to say, well, doing nothing means we're not giving our bottom line sufficient attention. We're not giving our guests and our new customers the sufficient attention. And we're failing to capitalize on an opportunity for momentum and next level growth. If we're rebranding and reimaging, we can't miss that people perspective. So that's how I tied it together. And, I made the statement, and I guess it was a bold one, of doing nothing is not an option from that perspective for business. And that was part of building the business case. So the third part was making sure that our employees were involved. I didn't want this to be an HR project. I really wanted to hear from the voice of the employees and know what they were thinking. And it was a little bit more challenging because a third of our business is international. So I've got international teams. A third is franchise and a third is corporate. So crossing those lines was challenging, but it was so rewarding to get the feedback. Up front, I communicated the intent. I shared the goal of what we were looking at doing for creating that people brand and representing the spirit of the employees and how it connects to the guest and the customers. And then we went on to really share the feedback, communicated, including my key stakeholders, my CEO, my executive peers. My franchisees actually did surveys out to the employees, the frontline restaurant employees, on what they cared about and what was important, and then validated back with them to say, is this what you said? Did I hear you correctly? So included multiple focus groups, from international teams to frontline employees to training managers to our corporate office. But it wasn't just our corporate office. It was really important that this was a very broad scope in the process. And then I looked for opportunities to enhance the ownership. Besides including the teams and validating back with them, we did some fun events. So we had some contests. We had a contest to name the people brand. And they actually selected the Our Texas Way as the name for our people brand. And it talks about this is the behaviors and this is how we care about treating each other, treating our guests. So when we say Our Texas Way, we know that it's talking about behaviors and vernacular, not only how we treat our guests, but how we treat each other, and it incorporates our values into that. And then we had the teams develop a logo for the Our Texas Way people brand. So they were involved in naming it and creating a logo, and that helped us drive. We did that through our intranet site, where we took in nominations and then we had votes and made sure it did take extra work and it did take extra time, but I'll show you in a few minutes how that really manifested itself in execution along the way. So on the next activity was either to develop or to validate an employee value proposition. And we didn't really have a strong employee value proposition. So one of the things that I did is surveyed a very solid cross-section of the employee population for two reasons. I wanted this to be inclusive and I wanted broad acceptance. I didn't want to create a people brand that resonated in the US. I wanted, and my desire and hope is that the international team would relate to it, and the words and the behaviors would be something that they could be a part of in the development. And this would be a corporate wide brand. So we spent a lot of time in creating that. So I would ask you to look at if you have one, is it current? Does it resonate with your folks? Do they know what it is? And think about why or why not as part of your process, and decide where you're going to start. So is it and this is where we started. So we created the employee value proposition, and for our restaurants, it was building friendships and a future with our down home pride. So that was the beginning. And it's interesting and important to hang on to the language that they use, that when you survey, that you really connect with their words. In building friendships and a future with our down home pride, friendships was an interesting word. And my marketing team didn't like it. They wanted to change it. They wanted it to be, they didn't think it was savvy. They wanted connections or collaboration or touch points. And I held strongly to the fact that this was about friendships because that's what they said. And when I listened to the restaurant team members, a lot of them didn't have maybe the family or the family support. And this friendships that they formed in the restaurants with their colleagues in many ways became a family. So that was a real interesting word that I held fast to. I said, no, we're not going to call it collaboration. We're not going to call it connections. We're going to use the words that our employees said and why this matters to them. And that was so important when I read this back to them and I said, are these your words? And they said, yes, these are our words. And then the future was another interesting point, not a point of contention, but just an interesting discussion, because it was about, they want a career, they want to grow in an organization and not leave an organization. They want a career path and they want to understand what that looks like. And then down home pride was, I want to be proud of what I do, and I want to have some kind of a connection to what I do every day and feel some pride in the ownership. And along this journey, it was really interesting because I asked them, along with what, I started the employee value proposition. I said, why do you come to work every day? What matters to you? And that's where I got the friendship, future, and down home pride was important. But I also got an interesting feedback. I asked them a question: is there one thing you would change about your job or your work environment or what you do? And the number one answer was their uniforms. They did not like the uniforms. So I said, great. And this just was a coincidental opportunity. We were going to refurbish the uniforms. So I said, okay, so you guys are going to be on the design team. So we picked different people, franchisees and corporate and international, to design the uniform. So not only did they give us feedback, but we put it into action, and they created the uniform. They got to pick the colors, they got to pick some of the material, they got to pick some of the styles. And it was fun because they knew we were listening to them. And then we did a conference. We had a conference at the end of 2019. And normally you hire models, and the models walk the runway and show what the uniform looks like to your franchisees as you're rolling out a new uniform. It's a pretty big deal in a restaurant company. And we didn't hire the models. We used our team members, and we let them walk the runway. And they were amazing. You would have thought they were in the New York runway, just modeling those uniforms. I can still picture it in my mind. It was so much fun to see them and for them to know that they were heard and a part of it. So Just out there in your chat, I'd really like to know, is there a word that is in your employee value proposition? And if you can just chat out that word that hits the heart of your employee base that is so important. Is there anything, maybe a couple of words? If you can just chat that back, I'd love to see that. I think I saw one flash up, but it's not there now. Maybe Linda, you can, I think it was integrity.
Yeah, integrity.
Okay, so think about that as you're creating your employee value proposition, or you're reviewing it. And if there's something that really matters to your employees as an HR leader, make sure you keep that word. Make sure it's part of it, because it does matter, and they do care, and they are aware of it. So we just had a lot of fun with the process, and made sure they were listened to, and they knew that they were a part of it and they were heard. So going to the next slide, page is the number 5 bullet is creating a framework. So this is all around core behaviors that define your company, or they define your brand. And this is the approach we took. So I wanted to really discover, define, and clearly illustrate what is uniquely ours. And that would be the same for you. So what's important as you think about your company? For us, it was the swagger. So we were trying to bring that swagger of Texas into it. I wanted to capitalize on the narrative, our framework, and our organizational impact. And I'll kind of talk you through as we go. And then on the next slide, we had our Texas way. And then we talked about the integration between the vision, the mission, and the values, and creating that cultural framework to consistently guide us through our sources of pride, who we are, how we talk, core behaviors, and core principles. And as I think about our people, probably the first line in our people is that our employees are the heart of the organization and the strength of our brand. And they're the ones that carry out the mission. They represent our values, and they're supporting our vision. So all of this was important in understanding the framework. And then on the next slide, as you look at it, you can see here's the core principles and behaviors that we were really expanding upon. So we invite people in, which is the core behavior. And then we were really clarifying, and we went into a great depth that I can't possibly put on the slide here, but it was, a page of talking about the fact that we're observant, engaging, and personable. We foster connections and make people feel welcome and remembered. And then, I had a little check with myself, and I said, are we there? And the answer is not entirely no. We have work to do. But I also realized that without the vision, we would never get there. And as HR leaders, that's our goal, is to really bring that vision forward and define the vision. But I didn't want it to be my vision again. I wanted to hear from the employees of what mattered to them and where were their senses of pride. And that's where it came from. And I think that was the greatest strength in creating the people brand. And then we build each other up. So what does that look like? Compassionate, humble, encouraging. We support and encourage each other and create a safe work environment. So, and then it goes on to explain, what does that compassionate look like? What does that humble look like? What does encouraging? We actually define the behaviors in what it looks like, what it sounds like. So actually went to the length of spelling that out and taking the words from our employees that said, if we had the very best workplace, what would it look like? And then number 3 was we do good and keep getting better. So we lead, we grow, we partner. And this was about our employees. How do we build our teams? How do we build upon that Texas heritage and empower ourselves to know what that history is and to do more? And then we give back. And this was all about community, being optimistic, generous, and kind. We support volunteerism in our community. We are charitable, and really going in and defining those principles and what that meant to us. And I blurred the faces on this because these are my employees. These weren't actors or anyone else. They were truly the employees. So by including them in this brand book, they also saw their faces, they connected, they knew what parts they had in creating the brand. So that it just really brought it to life. And then going to the next step on the next page, I wanted to talk about, our sources of pride. What are our sources of pride, and what does that look like? So that was about our community. Our drive is people. And when you think about drive, what are you trying to accomplish? What are your business goals? Our team, and how do we support our team, and what is our heritage? So we incorporated this into so many aspects of onboarding, training, development, career paths, and really just took this forward on our senses of pride. And when we got into the behaviors, we really were careful to explain what caring, passionate, genuine, and resilient, what does that look like, and what does it sound like, and how do we show that, and how do we recognize each other? So we brought that into engagement and some recognition awards and star awards. When we call people out for their great performance, we'll recognize them for being genuine or caring or passionate or whatever that might be. And then we did this little extra step, which I thought was important, and it's the Texas talk. So I wanted to capture what the employees said and how they described themselves. And this was the best, this is how they wanted to see themselves. What were they proud of? And they described themselves as gracious and confident, approachable, caring, and thoughtful. They were prepared, they were resourceful. And I know they're not all there, and they know that too, but when they think about hiring or when they think about retention, this is what they're looking for. This is what the leaders are rewarding. This is what they're hiring for. So all of this was carried over into interview guides, onboarding, and the website as well. So we really expanded in that vision and what they said they wanted it to be. And I think the biggest compliment or sense of pride I felt in going through this is the feedback was that you see us, you hear us, and I feel recognized in the organization as a restaurant employee, and that they didn't feel had happened before, or not in the same way. So increasing their sense of pride in the work goes a long way, regardless of the business you're in. I don't think it matters. I think that holds true for any business. So then let me take you to the next slide on launching. And I say this with great energy, is launch loudly, bring the village, celebrate, communicate, and participate. We had launch parties, and I didn't run the launch. They did. All the team members that were involved, they executed the launch of the People brand. And this is two of my international team members that we're celebrating and that we're leading up the launch. So they were really the leaders of this. And that showed up down the road as a people-led journey. So now I'll talk about the results a little bit on the next page. So it really took us a while. We didn't have an employee value proposition. We included them in creating uniforms. We participated in the feedback and the validation. Is this what you said? Is this what I heard? And so it really did take us about a year to do this internationally. And we launched in 2020, and our turnover went down by double digits. I don't know if that was, it's hard to contribute in the middle of a pandemic that was it. But what they said is they felt connected and a pride, and that meant an awful lot to them. And then the customer satisfaction ratings went up. So, and what they said is, I feel like my team members are treating me well, and I want to treat the guests well. So, just how we interact with each other in the corporation, it does spill over to our customers or our guests. And then the third thing was that sense of pride across the organization. It was evident, and it was evident interestingly enough, in the goals. So all of us as a business, we go and we create goals. So at the end of the year, when we created goals, and we really talked about living our Texas way, our cultural guidelines and vernacular of how do we live our Texas way and bringing that to life. And my CEO, he came, this is one of the days I was in the office and he was in the office, which we're not in here a lot, but he popped in my office and he was laughing. He said, Karen, how is it that you have goals across the organization of improving the restaurant design? You revamped the training. You're working on marketing and media that are all people related. You have organizational programs that are being changed, and international, the internal and external communications. Internal communications falls under me as well. And operating meetings, just how the meetings were going to be held, the way we were going to conduct it, the awards that we would recognize, and the alignment with recognition. So my executive team members had goals across for 2021 that were now on their tactical plans that fall under our strategic initiatives. And this all goes back to inclusiveness. So including them up front, these goals were given to the executive leaders by their teams because they were part of the people journey. The restaurant team said, hey, I think we could do a better job in designing lockers and making sure people have a training area in the restaurants, and they have a place where they can go through meetings with their team members. So I think we need to change up some of the restaurant design. And the training department came back and, said, hey, we're doing operational training really well, but we need to enhance that guest service or customer experience in the training so that it's not only operations, but it's people focused. And then the marketing department said, now that I understand this, I don't think our external website really speaks to all the things that we could talk about and celebrate from our people messaging. And then the onboarding programs in HR, we switched those up. And we talked about our history. We talked about our pride. We talked about that people brand. Same thing for my internal and external communications teams is how do we incorporate not just operational messages, but inspirational messages, recognition, relationships, celebrations, and the alignment with that recognition. So we executed through the goals. And this is why I call it a journey, because it has to live on besides creating a brand book that sits on someone's desk. That's not where you want it to stop. You want to make sure that it's carried on through the organization. So I guess if I go to the last page of the Pearls of Wisdom, and then happy to take questions if there are any. And the Pearls of Wisdom, as I think about it, it's important to assess the need. Is there a real need? Is it going to add a benefit? And what's the impact to the organization? So you want to think about that up front.
and then build a solid business case that speaks to the goals of the organization using your ROI, return on investment, your metrics, your data, and defining the expected results. So you can speak in terms to your CFO, because there is some financial monies that you want to put into this. So also think about the timing. Is it the right timing for your organization? Can you bring a cross-functional team together with what you have going on? And believe me, there's a wonderful reward to being inclusive. So if it's not the right time, you might want to wait a little bit, because there is so much value in, I did not have to create these goals for the organization. They were created because of the involvement. And then recognize that it may be more than 1 year, depending on the scope and the size of your organization and what you're trying to accomplish. And then I say execute through goals and autonomy. So letting the different areas evaluate, okay, from a people perspective, what's missing? What could we do better? They're going to think of more things than you could possibly think of as the leading. You do have to lead the initiative, but give them some freedom. Once they're included, you can almost lead from behind on the execution, because they're a part of it. They're vested, and they have a reason to want to execute. So hold on to that people vision at all costs along the way. And if there's that word or the phrase that is so meaningful to your employees or to your organization or to your customers or your guests, keep it. Make sure you fight for it, because the employees will see that and they will appreciate it. And I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to share the journey. It's been a lot of fun, and I would do it all over again. And I think it was just great to see the participation and the feedback and how people are feeling about it. So let me pause there, and I'll turn it back to Linda. See if there's any questions.
We do have some questions, and for anybody else who has questions, you still have time to chat them in. We've got about 10 minutes, so we'll answer as many as we can get to. But first and foremost, thank you so much, Karen. I love hearing the story of your journey, and there's so many awesome nuggets throughout. So I hope everybody enjoyed as much as I did. Okay, let's get to our first question here. Did the pandemic shape any part of your people brand in the near term?
So I think the people brand shaped our reaction to the pandemic, and people first, safety always, is that we had declared that people were a very important part of our brand and a part of our business. And we made decisions with that people first focus. And I think our people brand actually shaped some of our responses. I was just telling Linda that, in going back in February to the offices, so we've been in the restaurant the whole time, but going back to the corporate office, we'll be going back Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and working from home Monday and Friday. And when I started 3.5 years ago, I know that would not have been something that the company would have accepted. And because of our people first initiative and our people alignment, I think it shaped some of our decisions during the pandemic itself.
Excellent. Okay. Next question. Great to hear how marketing got involved. Do you have any tips for tapping into marketing's budget without losing control?
So this is funny, because when we were in our strategic session and the executives, we were in there, and, marketing has a budget, and they were talking about the brand development of the new branding. And our development team was talking about the image and the money, and I stepped up to the plate. I really had only been with the organization less than a year, and I said, okay, And of course, my background is not in food, it's in medical and insurance. So not only am I relatively the new kid on the block, but you could say I don't know what I'm talking about. So, and I had to have some courage, and I said, look, we can't do this without a people brand. It's three legs of a stool, and leaving people out. I've never seen a restaurant that didn't have people in it. So this has to be a part of it. I was very passionate. I had my business case ready. And at that point, I had so much passion, and I guess the CFO and I were going a little bit back and forth on this, on why he needed to give me some money for this, that my leader in marketing reached over and he said, Karen, I'll find some money in my budget. I'll give it to you. And it was just amazing, because I got that message across to my executive team that this wasn't an option. I had to build that business case though. So, and I had an operations leader and I had a marketing leader join me on the senior advisory group. So I didn't want this to be an HR initiative. So I had, standing next to me was one of my marketing team members, and the other side of me was an operations team member. So I think in how you set it up goes a long way, and they were very helpful. Some things I think might have come out of their budget along the way. I'm not asking questions. We got it done.
That's amazing. And did you run into any challenges at all just with, sometimes when there's a very strong consumer brand, because obviously in the restaurant business, you really need to invest in that consumer brand. Did you run into any conflicts or any discussions when it came to, between consumer and people brand?
So, yes. So sometimes the language, and I love my marketing team. This is nobody's fault. But they have marketing terms that they use in marketing, and I had to. That's probably the part I played. Is this is not a marketing brand. This is a people brand, and we're going to use their words. We're going to use their feedback, and we're going to align with people. It is an end result in how we treat the guests, but that will be the external result, the outcome of making sure we treat each other right. We have the right values, behaviors, and vernacular that we use with each other. And that will be the end result will be how our guests are treated as well. But that's where you have to take some ownership and make sure that you kind of guide that it is about the people.
Great. All right. And I think we have time for one more question here. Do you feel that your people-focused approach has helped you weather the great resignation that we're all struggling through? That's a great question.
I absolutely do. And I think there was a lot of effort along the way to remember to recognize our people. I mean, we sent them T-shirts. Other restaurants sent their employees T-shirts with pictures of whatever their food was, and we sent them T-shirts that said, you are essential to us, you matter, and you are the heart of the organization. And I'm telling you, they ask for more T-shirts because we did ice cream parties. This is funny, but we did pizza parties. We did, we sent Church's Chicken to I think it was Papa John's, and Papa John's sent their pizza to us, and we just collaborated with so many initiatives to make sure our people knew during the pandemic that they mattered and that they were the front line of our business.
I love that. I imagine it really went far with helping people to feel seen and valued and appreciated by churches. Was there? I know employer brand. It's lots of different tactics and techniques to really bring it to life. Was there anything in particular, like any one tactic or strategy that kind of stands out as, we did this and it really, the response was overwhelming, or anything like that? Anything that,
The survey, when we started with the employee value proposition, was going out and surveying the team members and then holding focus groups with them. That had not been done before. Their management had been surveyed, but the actual team members, and it was a nightmare to do. I just, I wanted to I regretted the way I had to execute it, but I would do it the same way because it was their feedback. And not only that, but it was from the franchisees, team members, and the international team members. So that was a big effort, and I would do it again.
And did you use that mostly to inform the process as you were developing the brand, or did you also share it back to the employees as well?
Well, I validated back what they said was important to them, and that future, that friendship, future, and down home pride started the basis for building the employer brand. So building that employee value proposition was the beginning, and it really cemented that relationship with them to make sure that I was hearing what they said. And I went back and validated. I said, is this what you said? This is what I heard. And when I went back and validated, my marketing leader was with me and my ops leader was with me, and several of the team members, that when they could join, they would come back and validate. So everybody was hearing it at the same time. That validation in the words and the meaning. So we were building that message along the way together.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Karen. This has been super informative. I love the enthusiasm and passion that you have when you talk about this. And I love all the specific examples and concrete ideas, because I think that's really important is, what are the things that we need to do to really make this work? So I appreciate you sharing those ideas and that story with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.